Thanks again for watching Anxiety Ad. You can follow me on Instagram at Gypsy Vibe. And if you've missed the other videos in this series, it is already in a playlist for you. It's called Gypsy's Backstory Series. And this is the next installment. So go ahead and check out all the previous chapters before this if you want to kind of know what's going on up until this point.
Here's a little story that must be told. Here's a little story that must be told.
So at this stage, I think the last thing we talked about was when we ended up in upstate New York from East New York. So we had moved to East New York temporarily, and then from there we ran away from Nor and ended up upstate. So the first place we ended up upstate was a town called Millerton, and this is where we basically like started our escape life, I guess. So at this point on, there was no more Nor. I don't know whatever happened to him since then because I haven't heard anything, and I've tried to find this person online, but they have no social media presence, so I shouldn't be surprised by that. But in a way I am, because he was such a tech person. But actually I do have some information for you guys, an updated bit of information that I got from my mom when I asked her about the stuff. She told me that, because I was like, where did we get money from to live in New York City? New York City is expensive and you didn't have any benefits. Like, what was the money? Like, where was the money coming from? You know, how did we pay rent in these places that we lived at with him? And she told me that the apartment that he was not paying rent for because he had a lawsuit going on with his landlord, which she thought that, like, at the time, she didn't know exactly all the details, but she said when she thought about it later, looking back, she felt like he was running a scam on his landlord where, I don't know, like he must have said that something was wrong with the apartment that the landlord didn't take care of and used that as his excuse for why he didn't have to pay the rent anymore. And something to that effect, like, obviously he's a con man, so he knows how to charm people into believing whatever he's talking about. She remembers going to court with him to give updates to the judge about whatever was going on. He would pretend that he was like sick or something was wrong with him physically, but then when he'd leave the court, he'd be just fine. So she was like, I didn't really know what was going on, but this is just what I'm surmising now when I'm looking back. That's what I think was going on, because he wasn't ever actually like paying rent for that place. So he was living there, and I'm thinking like, yeah, because there were like roaches in that apartment, although it's New York City, so it's like, it's not uncommon to find people living in places where there's like vermin and pests. But all right, I had to switch my angle because something was distracting me over there. Yeah, so the apartment was kind of like, it wasn't all of that, and we lived on like the 18th floor, like it was like really, really high up. And of course it was a studio apartment, so there's not that much space. So I'm like, I know he's just a single dude, but I mean, like for the income you're claiming that you are privy to based on your line of work, I would feel like you could do better than this, bro. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're gonna have some woman and her children move in with you, like, you could do better than this. But that explained a lot about him when she told me that information. She went more in depth than that, but that was like the gist of it. He's basically being a con man. Like, he wasn't earning money from a job. She told me she never saw him go to work. There was no place where he worked. He was just talking like as if he had some kind of fancy job, but really he was just milking the system in some way. Or, you know what? Yeah, I think he was getting disability for something, but he wasn't really disabled. So I don't know exactly what it was, but he definitely wasn't earning money from some job or business. In Millerton, we were staying in like a battered women's shelter. But as I mentioned before, there's a lot of politics with those places. And the craziest thing, you guys, we went to school. We had been there already for probably a month or so. And in that town, we met a family that people introduced us to literally because they were like the only other black family in the whole entire town. That was it. It was that like literal. They literally came up to us and said, hey, do you guys want to meet these black kids that live here? They're in the same grade as you. They're in your same age range. We'll introduce you. And that's how we met them. No lie. So the only black family in that town, and us, we became friends. And it was a family of 3 boys and 1 girl. And to this day, we're still friends with them. And they kind of like help us to like learn the town, like introduce us to other people. Their mother had a similar story to my mom, so they were able to kind of connect on that level, and she made friends with her, and so we had them as our allies in this town. The shelter was basically like, what they were doing was they were expecting for my mother to pay them some kind of fee or money to stay there longer. And I guess since you're like not in imminent danger once you're in the shelter, there's some kind of protocol I'm sure they have in place to like phase people out of their home so they can get more people in. But the problem is that there's a specific time frame that you have to do that, and if you don't find resources to get out by that time, that's it. They'll just make you leave the place. And so a lot of people end up actually homeless with children. And a lot of kids end up in like foster care because of this type of situation where their moms or their family members are just stuck in the system, and the system pushes them out before they're ready. My mother was not able to find any work or anything in that neighborhood. It was very like rural and country compared to us coming from cities all that time. So she didn't have access to a vehicle, so it was like a little bit more difficult for her to get around. Me and my sister were at school one day. No lie, teachers came to us, pulled us out of class. They told us that we needed to go home for something, but they didn't know what. Like, they didn't give us any information. And then we were just getting our book bags to leave to go home, thinking like, oh, maybe our mom's sick again or something. But actually what ended up happening was like the caseworker from the shelter was there, and she was like, oh yeah, pack all your stuff from your book bags. You're not going to be coming back to school. What? So I think we I don't know, it was just totally out of nowhere in the middle of the school day. And then went to the car, which was this van. My mother was already in the car. We're like, what the frick is going on? And she was like, yeah, don't worry about it. We're not going to be staying at this place anymore. So I'm like, well, where are we going? And she's like, we're going somewhere else. I'm like, where? And she's like, we're going to Poughkeepsie. I'm like, what the heck is a Poughkeepsie? And she's like, just don't worry about it. We're going somewhere else. I kid you not. We get to this town called Poughkeepsie, which was like maybe 40 minutes to an hour away from where we were. And Poughkeepsie, you could tell as soon as you drove into the city that it was like this rundown little, hood little city. There's a lot of like hood black people walking around on the streets. Now Poughkeepsie's not like that, but at that time it's predominantly black people and Hispanic people that lived in that neighborhood. So that's what we saw a lot of. It was like a mini New York City, the way that the people looked and the neighborhoods looked. So we knew we were in a city, but other than that, we didn't know anything else about this place. When we drove into town, they pulled the car up in front of the Social Security Administration building and literally dropped us off right in front of the building and drove away. Like, I didn't even know what was going on. They dumped us on the side of the street with all of our bags, all of our belongings, just on the side of the street, and we had nowhere to go. And like, it was just like the middle of the day. What the fuck? This happened in America to American citizens, okay? What is that? Who does that? How can that even be a thing? It's unbelievable, you guys. This is the social services sector of America. At this point, I think this was about 1999. Yo, we had so much stuff. One of us had to constantly stand with our bags because it was too much for the 3 of us to carry all at one time. So one person would have to stand there, guard the bags, while the other 2 hauled bags into the building, and then finally the last bag could be taken in. So we set up a little, camp of chairs on the side of the waiting room, and my mom needed me to translate for her. So as I'm translating, I find out what's happening. Basically, the shelter kicked us out because my mother didn't have money to give to them to stay there longer, and she had no real like benefits that she could afford to part with. They basically told her like that day that she had to leave, and and then they basically like forced her to pack all her bags up, and they kept asking her in the car, like, you know, if you change your mind at any time before we get there, we can take you guys back. And my mom was like, no, like, and I realized they kept asking her that because they thought she wasn't giving them money because she just didn't want to, not because she didn't have it. Wow, that's insane. In the office, she's basically trying to apply for everything under the sun, like any and every benefit: food stamps, public assistance, housing, anything, Section 8, everything, right? She thought that if she applied for this stuff, because right now in this moment we're homeless and incomeless, that means that we're going to get help. No, there's a waiting list for the homeless shelter. There's a waiting list for everything. And in Poughkeepsie, New York, that's like one of the hardest places to get any type of like benefits, like welfare benefits. One of the hardest places to get them. Their system is just overflowing with people. Like, it's too many people that are impoverished in that area that need help. So you could be waiting forever. Like, it's so difficult, right? Even just getting like something as simple as Medicaid or something like that, that's really hard. I had my son in Poughkeepsie, and I was only 20 years old at the time, and it was like so ridiculous with the Medicaid transitioning from like being under my mother to being like an adult and being my own guarantor. It was ridiculous, okay? So anyway, so we end up in this building. We were so hungry that like I remember hearing my sister's stomach growling. Like, that's how hungry we were. We could hear each other's stomachs growling. I don't even think we had lunch at school yet. This is ridiculous. I can't even believe this happened to us. Like, I hadn't thought about this until just now, like trying to figure out what part of the story that I was leaving off at. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Wow, I've never actually said this story out loud. We were like begging our mom, like, we have to get something to eat from somewhere, something, right? So my mom's like, okay, we gotta figure this out, but then we got all these bags, we gotta haul all this stuff with us. So how are we gonna do this? The office, we had been there for hours, you guys, hours waiting to talk to a caseworker and waiting for the chance just to talk to someone about what we need. Oh my gosh, we were like taking naps, and now I remember like falling asleep in the chair and like thinking I was like falling off of like a set of stairs or something. You know, when you have those dreams when you're like sleeping but you're sitting up. So we're just exhausted, we're a mess, we're confused, we don't know what the hell is going on, we're hungry and just scared, and like we don't even know where we're sleeping tonight, okay? 2 teenage girls and this random Asian lady, just no idea what the hell is going on, right? We leave the place. I think one of us stayed with the bags, and my mom and the other one went looking for some food. And then she had like a couple of dollars on her. She bought one sandwich from some deli that was like right across the street. And I don't mean like a hoagie. I mean a piece of bread, like sandwich bread that you have at home, loaf bread, you know, sliced up bread, turkey, cheese, another piece of bread. That's all that was on the bread. It was not a fancy sandwich. It was like a $2 sandwich. And we split that up between the 3 of us. I think my mother gave us, she gave us more than like our share, like each. And she only ate like a bite or 2. That is one thing I will say about my mom. When it came to food, like my mom did not play. Like if she had to go hungry, she would go hungry and make sure me and my sister always ate. She never deprived us of food on purpose. Like, my dad was the opposite. He could eat like a whole meal in front of you from like Popeyes and just laugh while you're watching him is slobbering, and he'd just be like, "You want some?" "Yeah, okay." And he'd just keep eating. Like, that was like a weird like inside joke my dad had with himself, where he would do that to us and he got a big kick out of it. But my mother never did that. She wasn't like that with food. Endured a few more hours at this place. The place was about to close, so we had to figure out something. And at the time, I think my mother had one of those carts, like a push cart. So what we did was we loaded as many of the bags. We like took things out of bags and rearranged the bags so that all our stuff could fit inside of that push cart as much as possible. It was like too much stuff on it. Like things were hanging off of it. And then me and my sister each had our book bags. And I think we like threw away everything we didn't need in our book bags, like our school supplies, all that. We just threw them all away and stuffed more things inside the bags. And we were carrying bags on our backs and helping my mom push the cart and walking up the street, up Canyon Road. And there happened to be these guys hanging out. Gosh, I don't even remember their names right now. I used to for a long time, but shout out to those guys, if they're even still around. Though there was these guys working, these black dudes, they were working on an apartment. They were like in there doing some kind of like renovations. My mom could see from the first floor that the first apartment was empty, the one that they were working on. So she literally went to those guys and she started like talking to them. And my mom's so good at doing this. Like she's so good at getting strangers to help her with things. She's like, oh, you guys, you young men, I really appreciate you. And she's just like, can you help me with something? I don't know anything about this town. I just got dropped off here. Like something happened. I'm running away from a crazy boyfriend. And she's like, we're homeless. Me and my daughters are homeless. And I have some money that I could give you to help me, but I won't have money until the certain date. So she's like, is there any way that you can let me stay in this apartment that you guys are working on? At night, I won't be here during the day, but I just need some place where I can drop my stuff off while I go look for a job or like something. And we won't be here in the daytime. Will you consider letting us sleep here at night just until I can figure something out? And she was like, I'll go, I'll figure it out, but I just need some place to let my daughter sleep. The guy, they took one look at me and my sister, which back then, I guess, we were like fresh 14-year-olds or something. I don't know. So like, we were like just blooming into our early puberty bodies, right? And we're like skinny and had like a nice hair. And I think they just looked at us and were like, oh, these cute girls. I can't imagine somebody letting these cute girls sleep on the streets. So they felt bad. So they were like, we can't let you stay here night after night because our boss comes and checks on things and we would get in trouble. But 2 nights, I will cover for you if you guys can come back. I'll let you guys in the apartment tonight. So she was like, oh my God, are you serious? And he's like, yes, just one time, don't tell anybody. I'll get in trouble, I'll lose my job. So she was like, oh my God, thank you so much. So we did that. We actually did that. The next day, we cleared out of there at like 5 a.m. because the dude told us that his boss was going to be there the next day. So my mom saw like this tall white guy who looked like he was calling shots standing around. So she went over to go talk to him. And she was like, hey, sir, I was just walking by here yesterday and noticed that these guys were working on this place. And I was wondering, like, how much do you want for rent for this place? Because I really need a place bad for me and my 2 daughters. So he was like, oh, okay, well, I'm charging this much for the rent here. And when are you trying to move in? And she was like, well, I really need a place to stay like immediately because we're actually homeless because we're in this bad situation. My husband just died recently and I'm a widow and like, so she's like giving him this little sob story. You guys, I could tell like the way he was looking at her, that guy had like a crush on her immediately. As soon as he saw her, he was like, you're Korean, huh? So, and my mom, like, she has like really long black hair. And back then, like, she was, she was young. She was like in her, I don't even know if she was 40 yet at that time, but she was in her either early 40s or late 30s, something like that. She looked good, okay? She wasn't, a fat ass like me. So she was like, trying to be like this docile, sweet little lady. And then she was like, those are my daughters. They're half American and they're good girls and they're not noisy. They're not bad. And we'll be really good tenants and we want to be here for a long time. And she's like, but I don't really have that much money. So she's like, I'm trying to find, a job. I'm going to settle down eventually, but I only get a little bit of money from the government because my husband was a soldier. And she was like, yeah, well, sir, what's your name? And he said, my name is Doug. She was like, oh, my husband's name is Douglas. Oh my God, God sent you to me. Dude, no lie. She said this to this guy and he felt so bad for her. And he was like, oh my God, your husband's name was Douglas. And you could just see the wheels turning in his head because dude, like just one, this guy was head over heels. So I was like, oh my goodness, what is she doing? I'm just sitting there like, this is not gonna work. Who the hell rents like this? So the guy's like, tell you what, he was like, I'm gonna let you guys stay here while they're renovating, but you can't be here in the daytime because it's going to be a liability issue. When they're done with their work day, you can come here, you can leave all your stuff here. And he was like, you know, I want to see you guys do good. I feel bad. I don't want to see you guys out on the street. So he was like, yeah, sure. I'll take, you know, this amount that you say you can pay for a little while. And then after a certain amount of time, I'm going to have to raise the rent. So she was like, okay, that's fine. I could do that. So that's how we ended up in Poughkeepsie, New York. That was the beginnings of our time in Poughkeepsie, New York. Later on, I feel like through our teenage years, middle school and high school, it was the usual shenanigans for the most part. We did move a few more times within the city of Poughkeepsie, but we didn't move out of the city, like totally just get uprooted and be gone overnight type of deal. That stopped at that point. For us in our childhood, things became easier only in that we were stable. We had some place where we belonged, where we felt not like there was no imminent threat to our physical safety. That part of it was over, but then there was the mental problem that were affecting us, which I will get into next. Until next time, I guess I will see you guys later on Anxiety Ave. Thank you for visiting me today, and go ahead and follow me on Instagram at Gypsy Vibe. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.